Hey, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be talking about the most recent announcement from Elden Ring that we are, in fact, getting a full DLC coming our way. So this is going to be called Shadow of the Erdtree, and we really don't have a ton of information about it. They essentially said that the game is in development and showed us a screenshot of what this art style, I guess, will look like, and I'll link that stuff below. There's just a tweet from Brandy Namco, and I just kind of wanted to talk about the DLC in general and maybe speculate a little bit, although that's kind of dangerous. So if we looked at the arena update, that really, they dropped the announcement and then came out with the DLC within a matter of days. Like, we had almost no reaction time, and I think that was kind of interesting, but I personally enjoyed it. I think it's really nice to have the announcement and then not have to wait, but I think with this, you know, because it is a paid expansion, they're going to want to hype it up quite a bit. There's going to be probably marketing efforts associated with it because they want people to pay for it. So I imagine there'll be at least 2 months before we see anything, but probably longer given the size of this. And they really just said that it's in development, which is fairly vague. You could be very early in development, very late in development, and they didn't really give us any indication about where they were, which is, you know, pretty typical for From Software. So I just think that we are going to be waiting a little while. It's definitely not right around the corner, but just knowing that it's coming is really nice. Having the kind of picture to look at is cool. But I also wanted to kind of talk about where I hope they go with this and some of the changes that we see with it. So one thing I want to talk about is, you know, how it relates to PvP, which is obviously going to be the most important thing to my channel, but maybe not the most important thing to you. I'm very excited about the PvP or PvE experience as well, but I think, you know, with PvP and kind of the changes that we've seen recently, there's a lot of potential for interesting things to happen. So I don't think they've really fully kind of expanded and taken advantage of the fact that the damage is now split between PvE and PvP. We still have balance issues for sure, and we still have, in my opinion, overtuned damage in PvP, where one-shots are just very normal for a lot of invasions, and especially as you get up to higher levels, it's kind of just ridiculous. There's not a lot of punishment, I guess, for use of FP, so I would love to see damage be, you know, tuned down significantly, and I'd also love to see just more incentive for players to be participating in PvP. So I think the arena did a decent job at least consolidating some of the PvP play, and also, you know, encouraging players who might not be interested in it to participate in it a little bit. But I think there's not the structural change that we'd like to see. You know, something like Covenants, I think, would go a very long way. I was looking at some of the data recently for, you know, just Google searches specifically on YouTube related to Dark Souls 3 PvP versus Elden Ring PvP, and despite the massive player difference in Elden Ring, where Elden Ring has way more players, we're still seeing more people interested in Dark Souls 3 PvP at its peak than Elden Ring, which I think is really telling. If you have a game that has, you know, 20 million copies sold and the PvP element is still searched for less on YouTube than the previous game, it means that it's not encouraged the way that it should, and it's not set up to like exist the way that it should. And obviously there's a lot of different facets that go into that, but I do think just, you know, within the story, there's one quest line and a handful of invasions that you experience from NPCs, but it's really, you know, you could totally skip it and that would be absolutely fine. And there's no loss in terms of, you know, major benefits to skipping PvP entirely. Like, you get some rune arcs, which are useful for like the first 3 that you get, but I ended up with maxed out rune arcs at a certain point, and, you know, they just have sat in my inventory and give me a like annoying notification anytime I win an invasion when it tells me that they're full, so I just end up dropping them. But I think it would be great for players to have the opportunity to, you know, use invasions as a tool to both upskill in terms of their mechanics as well as get some tangible benefits, because it can be kind of a painful experience. So if they're just looking to upskill their mechanics, they might try to find other ways to do it. And if there's no like tangible benefit, I don't think it's particularly useful. So I think covenants are a big thing. I'm also just going to be very excited to see what type of like new weapons come out. I think having some just variety will be really interesting, but it's also going to bring probably some new game-breaking stuff if they're not careful, because I think status effects are just so strong in this game, and I think it's very unlikely that they're going to stick to non-status effect-based weapons. And right now we have kind of a dearth of, you know, madness-type weapons, sleep-type weapons, blight-type weapons, and just from feedback from the community, I think people have found those to be some of the most interesting weapons available, but they're also they have the most potential to really ruin the game for players if they're not kind of added carefully. So I think if they are able to incorporate some of those status buildups in a balanced way and maybe make further adjustments to existing status buildups, that would be a huge change that I would love to see for PvP in the DLC. It might be outside the scope. It may, you know, they do often focus on the PvE element, and then, you know, PvP takes a little bit of a backseat until a patch comes out. So we'll see what the balancing looks like, but I think that with the level of, you know, just problems people have had with PvP and kind of the balance issues in general since launch, they may take, you know, a little bit of a harder look at it, and that's at least my hope with it. Obviously, it's super hard to speculate about what any, you know, developing company will do, especially From Software, but I do think they're going to do something interesting, and I definitely trust them to focus on PvP in the long term, even if it's not a focus immediately. The patches we've seen since launch have all been, you know, steps in the right direction and been positive indications that they do listen to the PvP community, that they do care, and that they want to see PvP to be more viable. And I mean, just if I was From Software and I was making decisions about this stuff, I think I would, you know, kind of focus on PvE first and then really try to give PvP long-term benefits, because PvP is the long-term player base of this game. Tons of people come in and play PvE just once, or, you know, maybe go to New Game Plus and play through it again twice because they like it so much, and then don't play it again. But then you have the PvP players who continue playing this game like way longer than anybody else. So, you know, delaying some of that stuff does make sense to me, and I think, you know, focusing on it long term within the game's life cycle will keep the PvP people happy and, you know, coming back to future games. I think we do feel neglected kind of at the beginning of the game's launch, but I've definitely felt listened to over time and just kind of appreciated that From Software is out there and does care a little bit. Like, there's tons of jank with these games, but that's part of the reason I love it so much, and I just am happy anytime we do kind of get some changes to the games that are positive for really a niche kind of experience, which is PvP in this game. That's pretty much everything that I had to say about the announcement, and just, you know, I'm excited about this. I'll let this last invasion play out, but if you definitely have thoughts about this, or, you know, any information, I'd be happy to discuss it more in the comments. I'm super curious to see what people have to say about this, and just would love to know kind of what people are interested in seeing moving forward, especially with PvP, because we got so much in the beginning of Elden Ring, and I just think there's, you know, so much to build on. So I'm super excited, and yeah, if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I'd appreciate it. But that's really all I've got, so I hope you have a good one.